Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Your Next Business Bestie. My name is Jen Wabor Hart, and I am your host. This week, I am excited to welcome Elise Holmes to the show. Hi, Elise.
Hello.
And it's already kind of a funny story. Elise and I were talking before I hit record, and we've never talked one-on-one before. And I was like, man, her stuff looks familiar. And back in May, I went to a retreat in Bozeman. I'm blanking on her married name, but Hannah Atwood's retreat in May. And she gave us, for those of you watching on TikTok or YouTube, you'll be able to see this, but she gave us these journals and these stickers, and they're Elise's. They're her artwork. So cool. It's not very often that I have a product before I've met the person behind it. But Elise,
Yep.
why don't you tell everybody what it is that you do?
Yeah, so my name's Elise. I'm based up here in Bozeman, and I know Hannah, so kind of the connection there.
Yep.
Um, I am an artist and designer behind Ketsol, and at Ketsol, my goal is to create products and artwork that inspire the everyday badass, which is something I've kind of coined because I love doing tons of things. I am definitely like a jack of all trades, master of none. And so like I do love to snowboard. I love to cross country ski. I love to ice skate. I love like all these different things. I love hiking. I love going to the duck pond. I don't know. It just depends. Um, and I'm also a mother. And so there's a lot of different definitions that come with like sometimes we don't feel like a badass. And I like to find inspiration in anything from like walking to the duck pond to going on a 5-day trek to Peru. So I am going through all of those, but everything I create is always inspired by something that is outdoors, that is like exploring. And so my artwork conveys that with a very like fun twist. A lot of people, think it has this like whimsical appeal, and I see
Mhm.
that. And there's a lot of animals. There is actually like a lot of almost like spiritual side to it that I don't intend to put in there. Actually, every time I create something, I create it just because I feel it and I don't look into it. I actually like purposely don't look into it until I feel like it's complete. And then I look up symbolism and 1,000% it always relates back. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I was doing that. Whether it's like I created a snake drawing on New Year's Day a few years ago. And I was like, it's dead of winter. I was living in Vail, Colorado. And I was like, I don't know why, but this is what I'm feeling. And then I look it up and I'm like, oh, of course, like the snake deeply symbolizes like change, shedding, a rebirth, like starting over. And it was the new year. And I was like, well, there you go.
I love it.
So yeah, that's, you know, the basis behind everything. And we create apparel for men, women, kids, no dogs yet, but I should. And
We
then
need
also,
bandanas.
I
Bandanas for
know
the
some
dogs.
bandanas would
Yeah.
be good. And then lots of lifestyle products. I have a small line of jewelry. I have notebooks, which you have. We sell lots of stickers, lots of cards, puzzles, things like that, so that you can feel inspired or just, feel connected to that thing that I also have felt in a different way, or whether it's on your desk or on your shirt, like you have a way to connect to it. So
I love that. And I love the idea that like adventure can be anything. Like we were talking before, like the adventures of potty training. Today is my daughter's first day of first grade, which was a whole different adventure. But I also, I spent 10 days hiking the Camino in Portugal and Spain. So like there's these
amazing.
huge spectrums. But
Yeah.
let's go backwards. When did you start drawing? When did you start creating art? Where did all of the foundations of this begin for you?
So, my earliest memories are literally drawing. I remember like my father was in like grad school up in New England, and we lived in like grad school housing. And I think I was like 4. And I remember like pulling the paper from I'm old.
The like, I know exactly what you're gonna, yes, the printer where you had to like pull the paper out and tear it apart.
Yeah, and it
Yes,
had like
yes.
the holes on the side.
Yep.
Yeah, and so like I would they'd be like, stop taking all the paper. But I would have like this huge banner and I would just constantly practice like drawing hearts or work on drawing dogs or whatever it was. And it was my mom was she even tells me now, she's like, you would do that for like 2 hours. Like you would just sit and draw. And then, my whole childhood, it was like anything art I always wanted to do. And my grandmother is an incredibly talented artist. And so she would come stay with us for a month or two at a time. And, she would, whether she was painting my portrait or sitting with me while I was painting and she was painting. And then my mother is also an incredibly talented artist who didn't even realize until she was in her like 50s.
That's awesome. Where in
So
New England were you guys?
we were in Vermont.
Okay, I'm from Maine, so I
Okay.
always enjoy finding the little connections.
I
So
love Maine. Oh my God. Yeah.
I miss the coast. I miss, it's funny because I when I lived in Texas, I always missed, I was like, oh, the winters, the snow. Well, I live in Colorado now, so we get snow. But I really miss the summers on the East Coast. Like there's
I
just something
know.
magical about it.
Yeah.
Bozeman actually
Although,
reminds me of it in a lot of
yeah,
ways.
it has a little more humidity.
Humidity, and you have water. The biggest
Yeah.
thing in Colorado that I miss is water. That it's, oh, I told you a cat would make an appearance, and here's Hagrid. You say
Oh,
hi.
hi, buddy.
So yeah, I miss it being so easy to throw my kayak in a lake somewhere. Like that's not easy to do in Colorado. But
It really is not. Yeah, I agree. Like there's like some reservoirs.
right, and you might have to hike to them, and I'm not hiking with my
Uh,
kayak. That is not my
no,
kind of adventure. No, no, thank
no,
you. So
no.
fast forward college, you went to school for art, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Where did you go to college?
So I initially started actually in Colorado at CU Boulder. And then just like, was a freshman, didn't know what the hell I was doing, as most freshmen go. And then decided to transfer back. My father actually was a professor. And so he taught at a small liberal arts school in North Carolina, where my dad lived the rest of his life, and then my mom still lives. And so he taught there and was like, you know what? There's this deal, like you can come to school here for free if you come here. And I was like, all right. He was like, you know what? I'll sweeten the deal. If you come to school here for like 1 year, I'll take you to Iceland with me. And I was like, done.
You're like, you didn't even need to do that. I was already coming, but yes, I'm there.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I ended up the first day of that new school, like I was like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. And it was
Mhm.
super small. Like I went from like 25,000 kids at
Yeah.
CU to 800 at Brevard College. And I deeply loved it. And, it was very one-on-one. I met, my soul friends there. I still, was deeply connected. And then, I got to like really get to know my dad. My sister even ended up going there. Like it became this family affair. But through that, actually, like not only did I learn a lot of my drawing and like different finding my own
Mhm.
like techniques and things like that. I had amazing professors that deeply taught me like art history. And then I traveled with them and my father to all these incredible places because we got to save a bunch of money. Um, and yeah, so I'm going to Iceland. And my dad has always been he was a huge traveler and he actually would lead trips all over the world. And so getting to go on some of those really sparked a deep love of exploring and also exploring in like just the most random ways. Like I love hiking in the rain. And that's because of the amount of times I have hiked in the rain with my father and had to have moments where I was like, you know what? This is just how it is. You're either
Yeah.
going to choose to enjoy this or choose to be miserable. And I was like, well, we're going to enjoy this. I wish I could do that with everything that bothers me, but I'm able to do it with hiking in the rain.
Hiking in the rain. So, fresh out of college, did you jump right into your business? What was the next chapter?
I was an excellent server at restaurants, um,
I
all
did
over
that
North
too.
Carolina.
I did that too. Yep.
And I do deeply feel that everyone should go work in the service industry because not only do you meet a lot of interesting people, you learn how to
Yeah,
multitask and you learn how to compartmentalize a little bit. You just like, you do the thing.
absolutely.
But I kind of worked my way into the lowest level job I could at a screen printing company in it was in Asheville, North Carolina, is where I lived.
My grandfather is right
Asheville.
outside of Asheville, so we
Oh,
have so
okay.
many little bits and yeah, he's in Flat
Wait,
Rock,
where?
North
Where does he
Carolina.
live?
Flat Rock, just outside of
Oh, yeah.
Asheville.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, Brevard is right outside of
I
Asheville.
thought
And
when you said it, I was like, I think I know where that school
yeah.
is. So
And my
that's
mom
small
lives
world.
in Lake Junaluska.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Small world.
I know when
I
you were
love
saying lake, I was like, you should go visit my mom.
oh,
She lives on the lake.
right. I just need a lake. But keep
I know.
going.
I do
So,
like going home for that.
oh,
So yeah, I like saw that there was this little like junior, it was like below junior graphic design job. And so I I applied and like kind of weaseled my way in. Like I let's say charmed. I charmed my way into this job. And during my interview, it was basically two dads ran the business and they kind of took me under the wing. And then the main graphic designer was so freaking talented. I hope someday Brent is listening to this because he taught me so much. But they were like, so this job is called being a turd polisher. And I was like, a what? They're like, you're going to take the bad art that people send us that are like, hey, I want to put this on our shirt for our camp or our church group or whatever, and you're going to make it so we can actually do it. And I was like, here we go. But I learned
oh,
so many more skills than I ever learned probably in college about how to really use like all of the Adobe suite and then also how to create prints for clothing that like work that
yeah.
incorporate like the clothing that incorporate the colors of it. You know, there's so many pieces to it. Kind of like a photographer has to take the whole picture. It's not just the subject, it's the whole thing. Same with, design, especially when you're doing it for apparel. So that really taught me a ton. And I did that for a few years while I was also waitressing and just like learned, and it was fun. And um, then got this kind of inkling that I was like, I want to move back to Colorado. Like, I miss the snow. I love North Carolina, but I was like, just need a change. But I
Mhm.
was like, but I am not going to move back there without knowing some kind of job. And literally the next day, I opened up Craigslist for Boulder, Colorado
Oh,
again.
Craigslist.
I
It's been a
know, back in the
while.
day when Craigslist was helpful. And saw this job opening for Warren Miller Entertainment. I don't think it said Warren Miller at the time. I think it just said like ski company was looking for a production artist to help, and it was a contract position for like 6 months or something like that. And so anyway, I don't remember because it was a while ago. I applied and basically got the job and had to move 2 weeks later. And so I
That's
moved back to
exciting though.
Colorado. Yeah, I was like, well, that was kismet. I don't know what just happened. And yeah, so I got there and just very much like was thrown into a whole other world where I was like, how did I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what am I doing? And so I would call friends that like knew the programs, like InDesign was the main one I had to use. And I like really just hadn't used it much. I was like, I know I'm capable. And I feel like that's my biggest trick as an artist and takeaway is that I am capable and I can figure the thing out. And so like when I feel stuck or I feel like I hate my art or like I'm like in a rut, no, I'm capable and I can figure it out.
I mean, really, like if we've talked about pivoting on the podcast, we've talked about resilience, but that's really what, no matter what you're doing as an entrepreneur, knowing you can just figure the shit out is key because it ebbs and flows and what people need changes and what you want to do changes. I mean, I started off as a virtual assistant and now I'm a creative strategist and I do a lot of social media, websites, all of that. But like the strategy is what I love. And so I'm pivoting to that. And we get to do that though. So there's
We
like
do.
both sides of it, right? We get to do it and we have to do it. So
Yeah,
it's just figure the damn thing out. So
totally. And so yeah, that was like a big learning lesson of like figuring it out and like feeling very much the imposter syndrome. It was probably, well, I mean, it's not like I hadn't felt it before, but like it was a real deep moment of like, what have I gotten myself into? And then I figured it out, and then I like rocked it. Like I was like, I'm like proud of the job I did back in the day at Warren Miller. Like I, ended up producing over 1 million pieces of collateral, like once it was printed, like,
That's
and stuff
crazy.
that I had to create was in every corner of the country. And I worked there for 5 years and ended up making some of their ski posters certain years. Like I would renegotiate my contract to be like, can I make the logo on the poster this year instead of just like doing the production behind that part.
Yeah.
And so it was such a cool opportunity. And then you just learn a lot of marketing, but you also learn how to talk to people. Like I had to like negotiate with the directors or, whatever it is. Like there's
Hmm.
so much you end up learning that you end up moving into your entrepreneurial self later. So then eventually like met my husband and we moved up to Vail because we were like, you know what? Let's go move to the mountains just for one ski season. And we lived in Vail for 11 years. So that
That's
happened.
crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. Like, let's just do this for a season, and then that season becomes a chapter.
Yeah.
Really.
And we like met our people, like we both kind of explored where to go next. And we had only been dating for about a year, but we started our first business as we moved up to Vail together. And so we were committing to each other very early on.
You learn a
Yeah.
lot about each other when you're starting a business together.
Yeah. And
That's
the
for
fact that we've
sure. What was the
still been
first
in.
business?
So we have, and it's still going. It's another brand we have called Mountains Co. mtns.co. And we basically make ski souvenirs. So we started with ski resort jigsaw puzzles, and it was definitely like we have no idea what we're doing. I literally like one day woke up and was like, "Oh, the truck is here with 3 pallets of puzzles." And none
Now I
of
have
us
to
knew how big
sell
a
them.
pallet was. So we,
So how
suddenly had like 1,000 of them.
this, what year did this business start?
That was 2012.
Okay. So going on
Yeah.
12 years for that
Yeah.
business.
Yeah, and so we still make puzzles. We also make like high-end prints of the resorts. It's all Vail resorts because that's who our licensing is with, and it's harder. We have been trying to get other resorts for years, and sometimes we get them and then they like revoke our license. They just
Yeah.
Vail Resorts has been great to us, and so we have stuck with that. But yeah, and then we're actually this year, total side note, we are moving into apparel. We have the rights to do apparel for Vail Resorts. And so I'm working on some fun designs that are very ski related that we can put like the Vail logo with.
Nice.
And it's been really fun to like experiment that way, really bring out that commercial side of myself that all my professors were like, "You're a little too commercial." And I'm like, well,
Well, that's my style. So when
I
did Ketsol come to be?
So I was always drawing, and I would make, like Ski Girl was one of my first ones. There's actually one called Mountain Men that's similar style. And that was one of the first ones I made. And so I had it within this like ski business. But then I kept drawing, and then all of a sudden it like felt like it didn't really fit.
Mm,
And I was still exploring my style, and we were traveling through Italy, and it was just my memory is very different than my husband's, but my memory was that it was very rainy this whole trip and kind of cold. And so I was just drawing all the time and really discovered this style that like of the foxes or something like that that's more animal based. And one day we were just like drinking a bottle of wine as you do and eating like cheese
of course.
and as you do in Italy.
Mm,
And we were like, there's something here, like between my background of understanding the screen printing world and then my love for art and things like that. Like we were like, there's something here. So we started at I was back in 2016, I think. But yeah, we came home from Italy and literally like put in another like, hey, like this is our new company. Like we wanted to at least kind of keep them a little more separate because they felt so different.
right.
And we did have a different name back then. It was called Vela, which is based on the constellation that we could actually see in Italy. Yeah, and that was our logo. Like it was very cool. But then it turns out trademarks are a pain in the butt. And even though we got the trademark for some of our products, like puzzles and stickers and cards and stuff, there was another brand out there that had the trademark that encompassed clothing. And so we knew about each other. They had started at the same time we did. We kind of like both had these funny little trademarks, but then back in 2021, they had been slowly growing. We'd been slowly growing, and they were like, no, we want the full trademark. And they technically had the right to it. So we negotiated with them. It was actually very amicable, but
That doesn't
yeah,
always happen, so that's great.
I know. Their lawyer and our lawyer were great. Like, and we were able to negotiate like basically 2 years to like transition everything
Nice.
out. And so, yeah, came up with Ketsol, which actually felt more appropriate. And like over the time period from 2016 to 2021, I would find the flaws in like the Vela logo that like pissed me off. I was like, oh, I didn't think about it when I designed it for this piece. But then I had that, you
Yeah.
know, insight to be able to use for our new logo. So yeah, it was hard. I don't recommend anyone trying to go through trademark stuff or changing your name. It is a pain in the butt and you lose a lot of money.
Tell the audience you told me, but where does the name Quetzal come from?
Yeah, so in our logo, the O is a bird, and so it's very colorful, and so that's representative of this bird called the Quetzal. And the Quetzal bird is it's spelled much different where its original name is. It's very hard to spell. But we took that name because the Quetzal is this bird that you have to go exploring in order to find. And that is how we feel about everything that I design. Like I have to explore, I have to go outside of my own comfort zone to find my own artwork. And that's the basis I'm always coming back to. And so Quetzal, like my husband has fortunately seen one on one of his adventures. I have gotten so close. I've gotten so close. I've seen their nests and I've heard them, but I've yet to see one. But
Someday.
they're stunning little birds. And yeah, you can't just like see them in the streets of like a city. Like you have to go out into the jungle to find them. And so that felt really representative of who we are as people, but also like my artwork is very much tied to that. So
Love it. And it's funny because this notebook that I have that has your art on it, that I had no idea until, about a half hour ago when we were talking, I mentioned to you the fox is my totem animal. The fox is, that's one of the biggest symbols in my life. And it's interesting because Hannah's retreat was really life-changing for me. There were 8 of us there. We all walked away best friends. A lot of us, I mean, we still have a group chat that we all check in on, but I made a lot of life changes after this retreat. I left a networking group. I left my W-2 job. I've been working my business full time, but I'm fully self-employed now. And it's like, you didn't even know what these foxes would mean to me. And I had no idea that 3 months later, almost to the day, very close to the day, I would be interviewing you on my podcast, which hadn't even launched when I got this journal with your art on it. And I just think
that's
that is, as you said, my dog's name is Kismet, so I also lit up when you use the word Kismet. She keeps poking her head up because she's like, "What do you want?" So I did a Kismet retreat last year. I'm planning to do one next year too. So, this is the shit that I love for this podcast. Is like you and I have never spoken one-on-one before. I've seen your name around in Diana's group, but it's all serendipitous, kismet, all of the things. So,
yeah. I
what
never
is your
even
business?
used the word kismet. I was like, God, I hope I
That's
used that correctly. I like literally never say that word and I just happen to say it.
that's really funny. That's really, really funny. I just the connections, and Diana and I talked on last week's episode about the community she's created, and it's just she attracts the people that are meant to know each other, which it's amazing.
Yeah.
What has your business looked like in the last 4 years?
Whew. Okay.
Let's talk since COVID.
Let's buckle our pants. I don't know. Buckle up. Are we
Yeah.
ready for this? Okay, so backstory. Yeah, I'm creating stuff and At the time, I was managing an advertising firm in Vail, Colorado, and that was fun. It had a lot of fun, but like there was nowhere to go with it. And especially with my brain, like I'm very ADHD. Without certain types of goals, like I would get bored. I'm and I found this at Warren Miller when I was a production artist. Like I would have to power through some stuff because my brain would get bored after making something really similar to all the other 50 things I would make that were similar. And so the Ketsol brand, we'll just call it Ketsol, even though it may have been Vella back at the time. Ketsol allowed me to be creative because I didn't have to necessarily be creative in my job. I worked with creatives because I managed them. And like, it was more on the business side actually of the advertising firm. And so I got pregnant, which seems like a very weird tangent that I'm saying, but like I was working at this advertising firm. We had our little brand, and then my husband and I got pregnant. We had been trying for like I think 2 years at that point. And when I gave birth to my son, he was preemie. It was very like sudden. Like, wait, we don't have a car seat yet.
Surprise.
Hello. And so, yeah, we gave birth to my son, and he did great, luckily. Like, even though he was preemie, he was pretty strong. But it was very much like it was over a month early from when I was planning on not being at my job.
Yeah.
And so it's just suddenly I wasn't there. Luckily, weirdly, intuitively, as sometimes we do, I had this moment that Friday of being like, I really should clean my desk. You know what? Like, I got some time. I got my work done for the week. Like, I'm gonna clean my desk. And I like kind of cleaned it out and then went home and went into labor on Saturday. And it was just like one of those where you're just like, whoa.
Yeah.
So after I delivered Apollo, who's my oldest, in the delivery room, we had been like talking about like maybe we should open a space. Like there's one next to our friends, this company called Huga Life, and like they were like, hey, there's this space that opened. You guys should look at it. And we were like, we need more space because like we were busting out of our guest room, which was going to be Apollo's room at some point. And so we signed the lease for this new place, for this store, the day my son was born. Because apparently adrenaline's huge.
Right. You didn't have enough going on already
No,
with a newborn preemie.
no, totally insane. So yeah, we signed it, and like a few weeks into my maternity leave, like, we're like literally putting him in a bin in like the space as like my mother is out there, and we're like fixing holes in the ceiling and painting. And like, what are we doing? But through all of this, ultimately, like I felt like I wasn't ready to go back to the advertising agency. Like my plan was to, and I had a conversation with my boss at the time about being like, maybe like I can go back part-time. But he wanted me to come back in December, and I was like, I just don't think I'm gonna be ready. Like I had a preemie child. Like it was like I think it was like November at the time, or October, or maybe when we were having this conversation. And I was like, I'm barely feeding him. I can't like
Ah.
go
So he
back
was
into,
born beginning of September, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
that's not a lot of
he was
time.
so preemie. Yeah. Like I was like, I just don't think I'll be ready. And so, in my opinion, from what I felt, I was like, oh wow, like I just, this is what I need, but I'd still like to come back. And, you know, I understand now as more of a business owner, like he was like, well, sorry. And so I got like let go right then. And um it was a gift in a lot of ways. It was an expensive gift. But then it was all in for us in the store, and it was great. Like we had that store for 5 years, and through COVID, because we made puzzles. Like if anyone remembers the puzzle situation in COVID, like there was a moment, it was probably March that we looked at the sales and we're like, that can't be right. Wait, is that no? Do we sell like 300 puzzles
It's so funny because
and
I
ship these?
hate puzzles. Fun fact, I am not a puzzle person, but during COVID I thought I was a puzzle person. So my ex and I
Everyone
did
thought they were a baker too. So
right. I did not try the baking because I knew that was a bad idea. I love to cook. I cannot bake. But I decided to buy this puzzle and my ex decided we need to do the whole damn thing in one night. And we must have stayed up till 1 a.m. doing this tiger puzzle. And I was so mad by the end of it that we just destroyed the whole thing, put it in the box, and I gave it away the next day. But it's like everybody decided that were going to have, because we didn't know what to do with ourselves, right? So
yeah.
puzzles and sourdough, or
Oh
like
my
the
God,
tween
and
to the
banana bread, man.
and banana bread. I did make some banana bread, but sourdough is not ever going to be my thing. So you sold a ton of puzzles, and
Yeah, we
then
sold a ton, and Matt's my husband, luckily had started connecting with like a remote warehouse to do some of the shipping of stuff. And so was in the process of getting them connected. And so like during COVID, we would literally sit watching Tiger King till
there's the
like
third mascot of 2020, the Tiger King. Yep. Sourdough and puzzles and Tiger King.
we're eating banana bread, watching Tiger King, and hand inputting the addresses of all of these puzzle things because we hadn't had the system fully integrated, but at least they could ship them for us. So we had this like funny like half system, but then like he got it up and running like within like a couple weeks or something like that. But yeah, so we were just shipping puzzles like basically all of 2020. Um, it was insane. Like we ordered a whole shipping container worth of puzzles at one point because our puzzle manufacturer closed down in the US, but we were still able to get one from overseas. And so we just switched over to that literal whole shipping container. Like that's a lot of puzzles.
It's a lot of puzzles. A lot of puzzles.
So it kind of saved us in so many ways and allowed us to like launch forward in other parts of both companies. And so it was great. And then the store was great. Like I would do these fun things because I would get creative. I was like, okay, we have some dented puzzles. I'm going to put them outside with a Venmo code. If you want a dented puzzle, come get one. Or, I
Oh,
would pull together bundles with like a cute sweatshirt and like, a mug and a notebook and like a thing of local coffee and be like, hey, if you're local and you want to order one of these, let me know and I will drop it off on my way home. Like, and so I was doing clever, creative things and it was really fun to have that store because the community side of it. I met a lot of people, met some amazing friends through having this store. And we grew a ton, but like it was just such a strange time that looking back, it's like, yeah, we grew, but we were growing in this like weird bubble because of the way the world was. And so now that we're kind of on the other side. I mean, yes, COVID is still here, like it is still real. It is, and there's other things happening in the world that are still like insane, but we're on the other side of this like deep pandemic feel that our business had to totally change again. Like at one point we had like 5 employees, like we were just we were basically just like putting out fires is like how the business felt at some point because everything was like growing too fast and we didn't know how to react to it. But then we also had payroll. And so like there's all this like insanity around it. And it was fun and it was entertaining to say the least. But then it got not fun. And it got really hard when things shifted, like retail sales really dropped. I'm sure anyone who has product sales, especially that listens to this, that was in business in 2021, like everything shifted. Like people weren't ordering as much, people got more conservative, like all of our wholesale buyers like pulled back a lot.
mm,
And even as a store, like we sold other brands at our store too. And like we pulled back. Like I wasn't making as big of
yeah.
orders and stuff like that. And so when you've planned for big and then you don't, like, there's just a lot of like whiplash that happens with that, like financially, but then also like product wise. And then you have too much product sitting on the shelves and you have to like deep discount. And, there's just like one thing after
Mhm.
another.
Yes.
um, yeah.
So
So
there
it was,
was another pivot at that point. I mean, you're not in Vale anymore, so obviously, like, you're in Bozeman. It's interesting. So my friend Christina was on the podcast. I think her episode will be 2 weeks before this one, but she had a similar growth period thanks to COVID. I mean, we talked about how like COVID was a horrible lots of horrible things happened, but also some good things happen too. She is a cookie decorator and she started doing virtual team building cookie ice nights. And that's when she got in with some really big companies. But then she had the same shift when people went back into the office, when people, it's a very weird, sudden change. So, how did you guys deal with that sudden drop off, with that sudden change?
so there was like, I mean, sudden change yet for us, slow change.
Right.
um, Probably dug our heels in a little too much. We would pivot, like we would do different things. We had a couple employees leave, which was great for a lot of reasons because it allowed us to like kind of stay maintain and things like that. We had a warehouse at the time along with our store, and it didn't make sense even to like have both of those. So I was like, wait, I'm going to move my studio and my office back into the store, and then we rented out part of our warehouse to someone else, so we could still do like shipping and things like that, and like there was still like a couple offices, so it kind of made sense for a while. But like, hindsight 2020, damn it, 2020 right there too.
Right.
um, we kind of like should have gone like a little like bigger with that, because it's still just like couldn't make all the numbers work.
Yeah.
And then in 2021, I had my second child, Ember. And although 2021 was a pretty good year, like for the business, it was a really hard year for me and our family. I had an incredibly hard, like, pregnancy. I I tossed some cookies every single day of my
Mhm.
pregnancy. But then when I gave birth to her, I actually, I don't know the technical term, but I hemorrhaged and had to be rushed into like the operating room. Luckily she was fine, but like, I mean, the stress that put my body under, but then the stress that put my husband under, like he was just left in this empty room, not knowing if his wife was going to come back and with his newborn. And so like that was a huge like moment for our existence, as you can imagine. But in the moment, you're just kind of doing what you need to do. Like you're not even like fully thinking about it. And so that I came out of that, but like had a long recovery um ahead of me
Yeah.
to just like recover. Like I'd lost over half my blood in that scenario, and had a really hard time like feeding my daughter. And then in a post-op, or post pregnant, what, post birth, what is it called? um One of my follow-up appointments for after having Ember, they noticed something on my stomach, and they were like, has this mole always been here? And I was like, yeah, but I felt it the last 6 months. And they were like, you need to see a dermatologist like right now. And so I saw a dermatologist, and they were like, we need to go into surgery as soon as you can. And so they ended up taking, it was a really aggressive melanoma on my stomach. And they were like, fortunately, you just had a baby, so there's a lot of extra skin here. And I was like, oh.
You're like, thanks. Appreciate that.
I was like, can I get a tummy tuck while we're at it? Like, um, but but yeah, they
Oh,
ended up removing like about my hand size portion of my stomach.
oh.
And then that was an incredibly hard recovery to do. And they did that. Well, I think I was only 8 weeks out from having Ember. And then they had this. So it was like I was just recovering from one barely. And then to go into this one. And
Oh,
so not only was it hard on me, it was hard on the family, but then that made it hard on the business because I like just couldn't be there. And I don't expect anyone to understand what anyone else is going through. Like, how can we? Like, if you haven't been through it, and as a mom, like I think back to the times before I was a mother, not understanding what mothers go through and feeling like such an a-hole because but then also
wow.
realize that there's no way to know until you've gone through it to
Right.
have empathy. And so our employees at the time just, I think they did their best, but how could they have empathy for me? Like they're not going through what I'm going through.
Right.
So I felt very like uncomfortable at work.
Mm.
Like I felt very judged. And so that was really difficult within that. And then on top of that, my father he was diagnosed with cancer as well. We're cancer buddies. And so it was a really hard year for him going through chemo and things like that. And then ultimately a year after that, ended up getting like COVID, and he passed away as the long and short of it. But so all of that
Yeah.
that happened between the birth of my child and then 2023, it was so intense on us and so much and such a financial stress on us. And when my father passed away, like I had to be there. And so I took my son with me. We thought we were just going to like help my dad. Like he was like
Right.
in the hospital. And we were there for over a month and until my father passed away. And then it turns out I was like the executor of his estate on top of it. And he lives across the country. So then I'm dealing with literally everything of my father's, who had an unexpected death. And he was incredibly healthy up until all of this. Like he how do you get it?
Contracted, right?
Seems
Contracted COVID. Yeah, I
seems
think that's
weird.
right. It
Seems
does
weird that
sound
I say
weird.
that. Yeah, my father
But
contracted, God, it sounds weird. My father got COVID.
perfect.
Yeah. My father got COVID when he was leading his first trip since getting cancer. So he was leading a trip down in Patagonia, like, and it was on his 70th birthday. And so he was like hiking around Cape Horn, and like I was getting all these cool photos, and actually have been
Ah,
working on painting based on one of them. And I'm talking to him and he's super healthy. He got COVID on the way back. And then because his body was just so still healing from, cancer and chemo and, complications he had had through all that, like he then got like pneumonia, and, it went downhill so much faster than anyone could have anticipated. And so it was what I have always liked to call a come to Jesus moment, that my husband and I had when we had to fly back to clean out my dad's home, which was surreal. Um, we it was raining because as North Carolina
rain
does,
is
it just
rain
rains.
seems to be a key symbol in your
My
world.
husband likes to be like, North Carolina has too much rain. Like, where do they put it? There's too much water here. And so we're in Target getting like packing supplies. And I remember like we're walking in the door and he goes, "Okay, so we should chat because the kids aren't with us. They're with your mom. Like, what do we want to do? Like,
Mm.
if we are going to stay in the Vale area, we need a bigger place." We had a 2-bedroom shoebox of a home. They had just raised our rent over $1,000 a month. And we were like, we need a bigger place. If we're going to have a bigger place, like it's going to be upwards of like 4,500 a month. And I looked at him and I was like, well, that's a hard no. And that was the moment I was like, oh God, we're going to have to move, like, holy shit. Hmm. Okay. And I was like, well, we have two options, in my opinion. I was like, we can either move back here to North Carolina. And he was like, well, hard no, it's raining all the time, which I'm like, okay, you happened to come here the week it was raining the whole time. Or I was like, or we can move up to Bozeman, where my aunt and uncle live. and they had already offered us to like, hey, if you guys want to move up here, like, would you want to rent our house? And we were like, that sounds cool. So we decided, hey, let's move up to Bozeman. Let's make a change. And so we took the next like 6 months to kind of close down the store, to try to sell a bunch of inventory just so we didn't have a bunch on the shelves. Like, and then, yeah, kind of just like rework everything back down to just like a simpler state. And then it basically up and through March of this past year, it's been very much like redefining ourselves, um, and trying to get rid of this mind thing that says like, wait, did I fail? Did I like, I had this thing and we had all these employees and, we would do these huge accounts and like, wait, did I fail? And it's like, oh, no, no, no. You just had to shift. Like,
Yeah.
things change and like there's nothing wrong with that. And I have to remember that that's what I would tell anyone else. But like when I think of myself, like, oh God, CapCut's doing something. It's trying to like enter the chat. Where did Zoom go? There it goes. Yeah, so I had to tell myself, like, what would you say to someone else? What would you say to your best friend? And we went through a few months of our bodies, literally our whole family, rejecting us and deciding that we should be sick. And I literally have never been to the urgent care in Vail, Colorado at all. I can't count the amount of times we've been to the urgent care here in Bozeman.
But when my husband and my daughter moved here last May, same thing. We were all super sick. It was like our bodies were physically shedding whatever the last year had been. And, my daughter had lost her biological mom in that time. My husband had lost his partner. Had made this, I was in a 4-year relationship that I left when my husband and I reconnected. Like it was all, it's amazing how our bodies just, we have to it's literally like ridding ourselves of the shit we've been through. But I do want to back up slightly because I think it's so important what you're talking about, that no, you didn't fail. I mean, for me, I was in my background is direct sales. And so I sold Origami Owl, which was a jewelry company. And I had a team of 250 consultants. I was doing it full time at 22 years old. Like, it was a blast. I spoke at their conferences. I ran huge regional events. And then it just didn't feel right anymore. And it didn't fit. And this year has been a ton of shedding the thing. My husband keeps saying, are you just going to quit everything? Because I'm like, I'm going to quit this and I'm going to quit that. And I'm like, things just they don't move from every chapter to the next. And that's okay. And you have this badass story and experience. Because who knows? When your kids are older, maybe you want to do the big store again. Maybe you have no idea. And I think that's something as entrepreneurs too, when we can accept that we have no idea what 5 years from what a year is going to look like, but certainly 5 years. And but you also can say, I pivoted and we kept going. It
And I
didn't
can go
end.
back to the I'm capable and I can figure it out.
Yeah,
Like that key
I love
piece,
it.
like being able to come back to that
I
is
love it.
is so important. And also like the forced rest is not ideal, but it's going to happen one way or the other. And so at some point, I think around like March, March is always a big deal for me.
March and
In
rain,
March,
those are the two.
yeah, watch out next March. But in March, like I finally like surrendered to the fact that I'd had bronchitis twice. My daughter was on her third double ear infection. My son had tonsillitis. My husband was stoic, but definitely sick. And I finally was like, I'm going to make myself sleep more every day and I'm going to take a nap every day. And it doesn't matter what I get done or not get done because, like, if I can't function, I can't function. And so I worked on that. It's kind of right when I met Diana too, and joined Camp Clarity, one of her amazing offerings, and got better. And I still wasn't like 100%, but then my sister and I had been planning this trip to spread our dad's ashes and do his memorial back in North Carolina on the day he died, which appropriately was 420. And my dad was the biggest hippie around. So like we were like, of course he died on
Of
420.
course. Of course.
Um, so yeah, we had a memorial planned for 420 back in, the town he lived in Brevard. And then we were going to fly to Peru and do a 5-day trek to spread his ashes through Machu Picchu and this
Mm.
Salcantay trek that goes up and over to Machu Picchu. And my dad used to lead trips there. And my sister and I was the only place both of us had never been. Like she's been to some places with him that I've never been, and I've been to some places that she's never been, but we'd both never been to Machu Picchu or Peru. And so we knew that this was the place we needed to go for at least our first trip together.
Right.
So, like through that, like letting go process of just being like, I need to let myself be sick and like also sleep. I knew that I was like, I'm going to be freaking hiking a thing up to like 14,000 feet or something. Saying like,
Yeah. Yeah. Ugh.
so I had this goal of like knowing I had to be better, which helped because otherwise I would have probably kept pushing and like just kept being sick, pushing, being sick. And that moment of like going to this trip with my sister was really like life changing in so many ways, but also incredible because we are 10 years apart in age, but we both have kids that are similar ages. And we had never spent time together outside of having our kids for more than like a couple hours. And we had 2 weeks together to like, we laughed for 2 weeks, even when we both ended up getting bronchitis after the trip. And so we had to stay in our hotel for like an extra 5 days. We're like, whatever, okay, we'll just
Yeah.
watch show as we watched all of Friends. I don't even remember what we did. But coming back from that trip and feeling like there was a new release of some of the stuck insanity that I'd been going through. Like my husband felt it, like I felt it. And there's still like residual stuff, but like there's very much a change of knowing, okay, like we can go forward from here. And from there, like I was still in Camp Clarity and there was some clarity that came out of it for sure. And since then, I've even changed how I do business, like how I create, which has been massive already for us. And this is incredibly new for me too. So up until this point, and feel free to like stop me and ask questions. Um, when I make a design, we would then send it to a screen printer and have them print it. And there'd be like minimums I'd have to meet. And, I'd have to give them incredibly precise directions on how to do it, the Pantone colors, all this kind of stuff. Totally expected, but like
Yeah.
hard because I'm like not physically in this space. Um, and so I was making a new collection that was very like Bozeman, like Wild West inspires, called Wild West. And I was reaching out to our screen printer back in Colorado, some I met here, to try to see like, hey, what are your current pricing? What are your minimums? They had all changed and they'd all gone up so much that I was like, it would be insane for me to print this many. Like I don't even know if these are like gonna sell. Like, why would I can't print like 144 of these to make my margins meet per piece. And I was like, this is crazy. And so I had one of these figure it out moments, which I tend to have every couple of years in a business where I'm like, all right, we gotta figure this out. Where I was like, direct to fabric transfers have gotten really good. I was like, I'm gonna look into this. So I called some friends that use like heat presses for their businesses. I have one in Vail, Colorado, Ski Town All Stars, and he has an incredible business of making hats that say like my kids have ones that say like Little Ripper on them and has like goggles on it. And like he uses heat presses for like thousands of products constantly. And I like was like, all right, what do I need to get that gives me highest quality? And he like gave me some recommendations, like kind of talk me through it a little bit. And so I ordered a heat press and then like was like, okay, I guess I gotta like make some transfers, and I designed all these transfers, had them come. My husband was definitely like, he probably won't listen to this, so it's fine. He was definitely like, I don't know. I mean, maybe you should just like do the screen printing for now. And I just felt it in my core. I was like, no, this is not the right route right now. And so I got this heat press and printed all of my pre-sales for my Wild West collection, and I deeply loved them. Like I was
So
like, oh my
cool.
God, these turned out better than the screen printing versions. I actually like them better. I tested so many beforehand to make sure, like, and I was like pulling them and like, doing all these things,
Yeah.
and I loved them. And so then I was like, oh my God, this like changes my world, because now I can be creative and draw and experiment and not rely on having to have all these numbers.
144 of a piece.
Yeah, and now I can make samples of stuff and try it before I like print a bunch of them. So now I just launched another collection. Like I can now launch things as I create them and not only see what sticks, but then like I can see where my creativity takes me. And this also allows me for my wholesale clients to be like, hey, I have these new designs. What would you like to order? And then make them on demand, instead of being like, okay, I hope I have enough on the shelves of that
Yeah,
144 I offer, because inevitably only one of those sizes sells out like very
of
quickly.
course. Of course. And it's never the size you think is going to sell out. Whatever size you think it's going to be on that print, it's not
Yeah,
going to be. And I mean, just from like an intuit, like you said, we're saying at the beginning when you're drawing and then you look into the symbolism, you can lean into that so much more because there's so much less pressure on 144 or whatever the minimum is. Um, That's really cool.
yeah.
So this whole new your journey is amazing. And I think we could talk forever. So we'll have to do a part two. Maybe like a year from now, we'll do another one and like see where things are at
I
from
know, because this
there.
is very new for me, but like
Yeah.
I'm so excited, and it's sparked so much more creativity. Like I am designing constantly now, which I
Love that.
haven't in years. So
Where can people find your stuff? Where's the best way to see your art, to order stickers, notebooks, apparel, all the things? Where's the best way to find you?
So you can find us at Ketsol.com, which is Ketsol.com. There you can find everything. You can also find us, and you can see my face always talking at you and telling you about everything in life. On our Instagram is at Ketsol Co. And yeah, there's a discount for anyone who tries us out for the first time. And if you mention in any notes that you heard me on here, I will throw in a few extra stickers, because I love to, bring the connections all together. So
Well, this has been so cool because, like, I actually this morning I was like, Elise and I have never talked. I'm pretty sure I met her through Diana though, and I had no idea that I literally had two pieces of your art sitting right here in my desk. So, a huge shout out to Hannah. I'll have to text her when we're done recording and tell her how cool because I was like, oh, I'm scrolling while you're talking, and then I spotted the unicorn. And I was like, wait a second, I have that unicorn. My daughter's obsessed with it and probably will end up stealing it, but. This has been such a pleasure, Elise. I just want to say thank you for taking the time to tell your story. And yeah, let's loosely plan on a year from now. We can see where this new chapter has taken you guys. Um, but also hopefully I'll see you in Colorado Springs this weekend, which would be very
yeah,
cool as
let's
well.
connect. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean, of all places, that's where I'm going.
Right. There's just so many kismet things about this whole conversation, which I absolutely adore. But for everybody listening, if you want to find me, you can reach out through Instagram, which is Life Jen's Way, or my email is jen@jen's way. So if you're interested in creative strategy, or you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, or finding out more about some of my guests, please reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Love to hear what you think of the podcast so far. And again, thank you so much, Elise. I appreciate you. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know you more. So this
Yes,
has
you
been
too.
beautiful. So, and for everyone listening, I'll see you next week on another episode of Your Next Business Bestie. Thanks so much.